think the environment has to be
What we're saying is have a heart.
We've got to be able to regenerate our
There'll
content.
be people who are kind, people who are cruel, but that's life. You can be bitter about pigeons. I'm fine with that.
What's wrong with Singaporeans?
Okay.
Alright, I mean, we talk about education. One bugbear which I think is worth mentioning is the Compulsory Education Act.
Yes.
We all know that Compulsory Education Act, when the child turns 6, 7, every single Singaporean is mandatory to send their kids to primary 1. However, Compulsory Education Act does not apply for children with special needs.
Okay.
Maybe because there's not
Maybe
enough
comment on
schools.
that.
Yeah,
Well,
can you
well,
comment on
I
that?
felt, when I first started volunteering, I felt the same. Why does compulsory education not include people with special needs and so forth? And then I found that I studied the legislations of many countries actually, and they were far more superior than ours.
How successful do you think this whole process has been in changing the general attitude of the Ministry of Education to the requirements placed upon the children? Because the parents who come to me are stressed out of their minds by the level of tension and worry and exams and their inability to do anything within the school system to modify or change the requirements that are being placed upon their children. And very often these kids need to be mainstream, you know, they're able to succeed. As Lisa says, she has lots of them that she's gotten through into successful employment and university, but they often need a slightly different environment or a slightly different approach in order to be successful.
Within mainstream?
Within mainstream. I mean, many children need to be in mainstream because of the benefits that they get from interacting with an appropriate group of peers, the behaviour modelling that goes on, learning to make friends, to interact with a group of normal children rather than children who each of them is struggling with an issue. And those are skills that those children need in the world when they're going to go out as adults.
The question we should ask is,
Have things improved?
what
How
progress
things- what
are
are
we
you
making
seeing
towards
in-
making
yeah.
this change?
I think I shouldn't defend the Ministry of Education, but what you just described, June, is really a feature of the education system, and I think that's being recognized, especially now with the populace being more vocal and us demanding the definition of success, for example, to broaden, beyond academic achievement. So things are changing, and I know that the MOE is doing from the staff, the psychologists and the therapists that are being employed in the MOE, for example, have increased manyfold, not even just doubled, manyfold. And I think the Allied Educator Scheme is something that was started just about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I believe that every primary school, for
Can you
example...
explain what this is,
has-
the Allied Educator Scheme?
Yes, the Allied Educator is a learning support specialist. So you don't just go into a class with just a teacher, a talking head there. You have people supporting
So
you.
this is to help
It's
children
not
with
still not
special
enough.
needs.
And the ratio is still not enough, but every primary school had at least one now. And I think that come 2015, if I'm not wrong, another 200 will be added. And so these are, I think, attempts at trying to make the system a bit more friendly.
Yeah,
And,
that has been
so-
very apparent
yeah.
in speaking to the parents who come to me.
Yes.
But they still find interacting with the authorities to be extremely intimidating. And many of them have voiced to me their fears that if they go into the schools and they talk to the heads of the schools or the heads of departments about the special modifications that they need for their child, they're afraid that their children are going to be negatively impacted, that it will be seen,
I think that might be a quite generalized statement.
Yeah.
I've known of
Well-
many allied educators, psychologists, and
Oh, I'm
there's a
sure
whole
that they're
special
there
ed-
and
But this
doing
is also a
great job,
reality
but this
of
is coming
parents.
from the parents.
yes. So I think that the situation definitely is not perfect yet, but I can see the progress. And what we need to do is to work with them, to instead of discouraging them, work with them to close the gap and see if people who are, for example, Yan and those of us who are from disabilities but specific, even the private sector, specific specialists can offer some support as well.
Yeah.
So I do think it's an ongoing process. It's a work in progress, and I'm convinced that things have to improve, will improve, but we just need to work together. It's still not quite there.
A country or a nation can't see itself to be evolved until and unless it actually embraces all and everyone individually. and
Every
collectively.
citizen.
Very true.
And I think for the most part, we are not there yet. For the larger population, I think we don't even know what we don't know. I admit, when Matthew was born in Australia, it's quite well established.
Matthew is your Down
my son,
syndrome
my Down
son,
syndrome
okay.
son, that's right. So we experienced it there. We came back and we realized that in Singapore, it wasn't as well established. Now, I could go away and think, why isn't it that way? But I can look at Singapore and I think, well, yeah, Singapore is younger than I am. I did start by saying I am young. so to me, there's a lot to go.
Yeah.
I think we do need to be patient with ourselves. I think we do need to look at those things and start turning them over and say, well, what is the Ministry of Education? I was from the Ministry of Education.
You were?
I was a teacher.
You were.
I was a teacher.
Oh,
right?
you snuck that one
and
past
for
us.
teachers, yes. And I would say for the MOE schools do have a lot to do. They have a big role to play. I'm honestly not sure if the word mainstreaming is what I would really go for.
For want of a better description.
For want of a better, exactly.
Yes.
But the people I know who are in the mainstream are also struggling, so I'm not very sure if I want my child in there as well.
Absolutely.
June says that there is a lot of stress on parents.
Yeah.
And I think that it is acknowledged that we are moving in the right direction. May I ask, what is it that we can do to accelerate the process? Is it a question of having more allied educators so that they get more support? So is it a question of support? Or is it a question of awareness where the principal themselves must be aware of the situation?
When I co-founded Pathlight, most of our paradigm was just, it's either your mainstream or your special school.
That's right.
And if you're in special school, you're
Very black and
segregated
white.
and it's black, and it's bad, and if you're mainstream, you're good, and but there's not enough support. And so what we did was, my volunteers and I, my staff and my co-volunteers, and I went around the whole world looking at different systems. We wanted to find something that hopefully might work for Singapore because we are unique. I saw a model that was quite interesting in the US and in Australia. It's a satellite class model. And I saw it, and it was, I think it was in Australia, some of the Catholic schools did that. And the Catholic schools had special units where they would approach the mainstream schools to say, can you lend me a classroom so that my special needs kids can be in your radar in the physical environment. So I leased some classrooms from the school next door, the mainstream school, and they were very kind. And what I did was, instead of having just a mainstream or a special system, school system, I created together with my team a school within a school. We had our students going into their physical classroom with base classrooms in the mainstream schools, but intact with resources so that we are not a burden to the mainstream school, intact with resources, psychologists and teachers who are trained, special needs trained. We put them in there, 8 classes, first year, okay? And then we said that, look, some of our students might be able to join you for academic
For some
integration.
of the
And so,
subjects.
yes, we can share the same CCA programs and social programs. We celebrate International Defense Day together, Friendship Day together. And so that started a whole model, and we call it the satellite school model. And so first year was, I won't call it illegal, but it doesn't have really formal support. But it didn't have official endorsement at that time. So when it became successful, we saw that it could work. We unpacked it, make it a system and structure, and document it and see how to improve it with correct resources. I went to Parliament and spoke about it. And lo and behold, we got the support of, at that time was Minister Taman and Gan Kim Yong, who were in Ministry of Education. They said, looks like a good system. And they said, we will endorse it. And since then, we have got 3 already, satellites, with about 200 students all over in 3 mainstream schools. And next year, we're going to start another one.